You will hear a woman calling an animal park to inquire about a job. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Pinders Animal Park, hello.
Oh, hello. I'm ringing to ask whether you have any jobs available.
What sort of work are you looking for? Is that permanent or part-time or...
Actually, I'm just looking for temporary work. I'm a student.
Oh, right. I'll just get a form and ask you a few questions. Then I'll pass your application on to our recruitment section. Is that okay?
Fine, thank you.
So, starting with your name.
It's Jane Lammerton.
Is that Lammerton?
There's only one M in it.
Oh, right. And your address?
It's 42 West Lane.
Right. And is that in Exeter?
Yes.
Okay. And can you give me your mobile phone number?
07792 430 921.
Right. Now, the next thing is, when are you available to start work?
I finish college on the 8th of June. That's in 3 weeks' time. But I can't start work till the 11th because I've got a hospital appointment on the 10th of June.
No problem. Now, I need to ask you a few questions about the type of job that might be suitable. Do you have any particular kind of work in mind? It doesn't necessarily mean that you will get work in the field that you want, but I can record your preferences.
Well, I'd do anything, and I have worked as an assistant animal keeper before, when I was still at school, but I'm studying at a catering college now, and I'd really like to get some experience as an assistant cook if possible.
Right, so that's your first choice. Have you done that kind of job before?
No, but I've helped my aunt sometimes. She runs a cafe in Exeter.
Would you say you've got any relevant skills then?
Well, I'm used to using the kind of equipment you usually find in a kitchen.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Okay, and I know you're still studying, but do you already have any qualifications related to that kind of work? A hygiene qualification, for example?
I haven't, no, but I've got a certificate in food handling. I did it before I decided to become a full-time student.
Fine. Okay. That means you wouldn't need any specific training if you did get the kind of work you wanted. But you'd have to do a short course on first aid. All our new employees do that. It just takes half a day, and most people find it generally useful.
Oh, yes, I'm sure it is.
Well, that's about it, really. Just one last thing. Can you give me the name of someone who would give you a reference, like a previous employer or...
Oh, yes. You can put Dr. Ruth Price.
Okay. Is that one of your college lecturers?
She's my college tutor. She's known me for over 2 years, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind. In fact, she's given me a reference before.
Fine. We'd probably contact her by phone. Do you happen to know her number?
I've got it on my phone, yes. It's 0208 685 114. That's a landline.
Good. Well, as I say, I can't promise anything, but I'll pass your application on, and you should hear in a few days. Is there anything else?
Just one thing. I suffer from a particular type of colour blindness, and sometimes employers have to make special arrangements for that.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. It won't be good that you've made us aware of it. You can provide us with more details if you're offered a job.
Okay, thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 2.
You will hear some students talking about an assignment.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Hello, Tom.
Hello, Anne.
What have you been doing?
Oh, just sitting around, catching up with some reading.
I've had a great time. You know we're doing this assignment on... what is it?
Museums, their costs and benefits.
That's right. Well, I've been to the Sandgate Museum. It was really good. These local museums are really interesting because they connect people with the history of one special place. We all know about kings and emperors and battles and wars, but local museums tell us about the everyday lives of ordinary people, and that's why they are so important.
I'm not so sure about that. I think they are of interest, but they're so small that they can't give a true picture. They do their best.
I don't really agree. They do give a true picture, but perhaps not a full picture. It's the truth, but not the whole truth.
I think the smallness is the number one problem. Because they're small and local, they attract few visitors. That's why they have so little money. And because they have little money, they can't buy or maintain many really interesting exhibits. As a result, the shop is almost as big as the museum to try to raise money by selling souvenirs, postcards, sweets and so on.
I think they find it difficult, but not impossible. And don't forget, they get a lot of their exhibits free from local people. There was this boat, for example, that was fantastic.
Really? What was that?
There was a massive fishing boat, a real one, about 100 years old, and you could walk on it and get the feeling of what fishing in those days was really like.
Sounds quite good. But I've always found that these kinds of museums are a bit dingy. For example, the display cabinets are so dark that you can hardly see the exhibits, and the labels are sometimes difficult to read.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
So coming back to our assignment, what we've got to decide is whether these museums should be funded by the government or just by local people.
I think it depends entirely on what kind of museum it is.
How do you mean?
Well, take local history museums. They are small, so they won't survive without financial support. But that should come from the local authority, since only people in that area or tourists will visit it.
I agree, but what about big natural history museums? Surely they should get money from the central government.
Why? Children who want to learn about nature can go out into the countryside with their school teachers. They could survive from donations, and they get loads of visitors anyway. The state should spend more on science museums, since not enough people are studying science these days.
I'm not so sure. But I do think a sort of museum which should not get public funds is the craft museum.
Yes, like museums of cotton weaving.
Yeah, which are of interest to only a very small number of people, and they should pay for it.
I agree, but a working farm is a different thing again. That's something from the past of all of us, and so it's important to the local community. Kids can learn a lot too. That's the sort of thing that the local government should be spending its money on.
Yes, I agree. Well, I think we've got plenty of ideas for our assignment.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 3. 2. Section 3. You will hear a trainee teacher called Eve talking to her university tutor about her preparations for teaching practice. Before you listen, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello, Eve. Come in and sit down. How's it going?
Fine, thanks. I'm looking forward to my teaching practice next week.
Good. Now, you've got 2 classes, haven't you? Year 3 and Year 6. Have you done your lesson plans?
Well, I've decided to take the topic of renewable energy. I haven't done a lesson plan for Year 6 yet, but I thought I'd base their lesson on an example of very simple technology. So I've brought this diagram to show you. I got it from the internet.
Let's see. A biogas plant. So this is equipment for producing fuel from organic waste?
Yes. The smaller container on the left is where you put the waste you've collected.
Right, and from there it's piped into the larger tank.
That's right. And that's slurry on the base of the larger tank.
Right. And what exactly is slurry?
It's a mixture of organic waste and water.
So is that pipe at the bottom where the water comes in?
Yes, it is. As the slurry mixture digests, it produces gas, and that rises to the top of the dome. Then, when it's needed, it can be piped off for use as fuel in homes or factories. It's very simple.
I suppose there's some kind of safety valve to prevent pressure build-up?
That's the overflow tank. That container on the right. As the slurry expands, some of it flows into that, and then once some of the gas has been piped off, the slurry level goes down again, and the overflow tank empties again.
I see. Well, I think that's suitably simple for the age level it's for. I look forward to seeing the whole lesson plan.
Thanks. And can I show you my ideas for the Year 3 lesson?
Of course. Let's look.
Before you listen to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
I thought I'd introduce the topic by writing the word energy on the board and reinforcing the spelling and the pronunciation. Then I'll do a little mime, run on the spot or something, to convey the sense.
I'd keep it brief at this stage.
Yes, I will. Then I'll wipe the word off and write the question, where does energy come from? And see what the pupils come up with.
Fine. I'd suggest that you just brainstorm at this stage and don't reject any of their suggestions.
Yes, that's what I was going to do. Then I've produced a set of simple statements like, energy makes cars move along the road, and energy makes our bodies grow. There are 8 altogether.
Are you going to give them out as a handout, or write them up on the board?
First, them up on the board, and then I'll read them out loud. And I'll get the pupils to copy them out in their notebooks. I'll also ask them to think up one more similar statement by themselves and add it to the list.
Good idea.
After that, I thought I'd vary things a bit by sticking some pictures up of things like the sun and plants and food and petrol and a running child. And I'll get the pupils to work out what order the pictures should come in terms of the energy chain.
I think that's a very good idea. You could move the pictures around as the pupils give you directions.
Yes, I think they'd enjoy that. And to finish off, I've made a gap fill exercise to give out. They'll be doing that individually, and while they're writing, I'll walk round and check their work.
Good. And have you worked out the timing of all that? It'll probably take you right through to the end of the lesson.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 4. In this section, you'll hear a lecture on coral reef. First, you have some time to read questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40.
Do you fancy diving in the wonderful world of coral reefs, green sponges, colourful fish and red crabs? It is a rich garden beneath the waves. But how much do you know about the corals? Are they animals or plants? What are the threats to coral reefs? Today, Mr. Tim Harford, Executive Director of the Coral Reef Alliance, is going to introduce the facts about coral reefs.
Good afternoon, everyone. Coral reefs are one of nature's most magnificent creations. It is filled with thousands of unique and valuable plants and animals. Over 1/4 of all marine species depend on healthy coral reefs. Humans also depend on coral reefs. These marine ecosystems are the primary source of food and income for millions of people, a vast repository of valuable chemical compounds and medicines, and a natural wave barrier that protect beaches and coastlines from waves and storms. Coral is actually the exoskeletons of coral polyps. Made from limestone, these skeletons build up over time, forming the reef. New corals are born each April. At a certain hour, on a certain night, mature corals suddenly release clouds of eggs and sperm into the sea. After the fertilized eggs take root on the seafloor, they can grow up to 15 centimeters per year. Coral reefs are present in the waters of over 100 countries. These are warm, 18 to 29 degrees centigrade, shallow, sunny regions primarily between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. Only clear, warm salt water can support a coral reef. And because sunlight is crucial to the reef's survival, the water must also be shallow. The algae that grow on coral provide much of the coral's food. In deeper water, algae cannot get the sunlight they need to grow. Most coral reefs are in the tropics because natural conditions there are perfect. In their modern form, coral reefs have thrived on Earth for over 50 million years. In recent years, however, more than 11% of the world's reefs have been lost, with another 16% severely damaged during the El Niño event in 1998. Up to 32% of coral reefs may be destroyed by human activities in the next 30 years if we do not take action now. Corals and coral reefs are extremely sensitive. Slight changes in the reef environment may have detrimental effects on the health of entire coral colonies. These changes may be due to a variety of factors. One of the greatest threats to coral reefs is human expansion or development. As human population increases, so does the harvest of resources from the sea. Due to overfishing, reef fish populations have been greatly decreased in some areas of the world. The removal of large numbers of reef fish has caused the coral reef ecosystems to become unbalanced. As we know, corals are also very popular as decorations. A large amount of the most healthy corals are selected by commercial collectors. They sell the corals to souvenir shops, where a large number of tourists wait to purchase them as decorations or souvenirs. Coral reefs also receive much damage from both commercial and private vessels. The leakage of fuels into the water and the occurrence of spills by large tankers are extremely damaging to local corals. Although much of the coral reef's degradation is directly blamed on human impact, there are several natural disturbances which cause significant damage to coral reefs. The most recognized of these events are hurricanes or typhoons, which bring powerful waves to the tropics. These storm waves cause large corals to break apart and scatter fragments about the reefs. Home to a diverse community of creatures, coral reefs are underwater treasure chests of color and activity. Predators and prey swim and crawl among the coral in nature's never-ending dance of life and death. This lively, fascinating world beneath the waves is just waiting to be explored. That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.